Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for us to build the most ultimate, most powerful AMD gaming PC you've ever seen? Unless you're watching this in the future. Then I'm sorry, we're 10 years behind. Because throughout this video, we're going to walk you through some of the hottest, most powerful PC gaming hardware on the planet. We're going to show you exactly how to put it together, how to build a gaming PC, and we're going to show you just how beautiful, but also just how powerful this thing will be by showing you those all-important gameplay benchmark numbers. So if you want to build something like this yourself, you know exactly how it performs. And this one is going to be super special because we've actually got something a little bit more unique up our sleeve. I mean, I'm not wearing a jumper, but metaphorically, I think this thing is going to kick some serious ass. So all that's left to say is a massive thank you to these video sponsors, AMD and Gigabyte. Let's get started. And I think our first port of call should be to walk you through some of the key components and also the theme that we're going for. So as I say, this was sponsored by Gigabyte, so they have provided a stealth motherboard, which is very exciting for a reason I'll show you in just a second, as well as obviously their top-end 9070 XT, which in terms of AMD GPUs is the best you can get right now. It supports that all-important FSR4, which has fantastic image quality, so effectively means that the same quality you're getting before, you can get a much higher frame rate, or at the same frame rate that you had before, you can get much better image quality. So it's kind of like a win-win really, and obviously you got a load more features with this generation, more performance, all of this stuff that we'll walk you through when we talk about the gameplay performance. But both of these are white, and I haven't, certainly in a long time, done like a black with white components inside build, and the more and more I'm kind of experimenting with these things rather than just doing all black or all white, I think mixing and matching actually has a very good place in PC Centric. Well, that just sounds all around weird, and there's not really an easy way to kind of skim past that, so let's just go with the awkwardness. As I say though, this is the NZXT H9. It's a little bit different to previous generations. This is the latest one. Well, it's just still a little bit weird in terms of the fact that both the H3, H5 and H7 are kind of rectangular, but then the H6, which is an even number, and now the H9 is kind of like this edgy dual chamber design. It just doesn't work in terms of naming, but otherwise I think the design is very cool, and it's a larger size chassis, but it's not actually crazy. This is kind of similar to what, like a height Y60, Y70, maybe in the middle of the two. So obviously it is going to take up a fair amount of space on your desk, but this is the RGB version, so it's not cheap, but it does come with fan frames, RGB fan frames at the bottom and at the side. We're going to put a large radiator at the top, but crucially, you do have this kind of like side intake here as well that obviously goes into the main chamber. So even if you're going to build this with like the most top-end graphics card, top-end CPU, you should, emphasis on should, be able to get very good thermals and be able to tune it down for low noise levels. But let's park that to one side for a second, because the other key component, buried under our SSD and RAM, still very expensive. I don't see this changing anytime soon. We have our CPU. Now, I want to be very clear about this.
We're going overkill.
We're going for like the ultimate AMD build here, but for most people, and even then that's potentially a bit overkill, you're going to want to set this down. So this is the 9950 X3D, which is essentially a 9800 X3D with 8 cores kind of attached to it. So whenever you're doing productivity or anything where you can actually utilize 16 cores, you're going to use all of them. And then when it comes to actual gameplay, that's when it essentially is going to become an 8-core 9800 X3D by turning one of the CCDs off. It's for this reason that I say, unless you specifically want or need 16 cores, I'd recommend just saving the money and getting the 9800 X3D, as the performance between the two is essentially going to be the same as long as they're both configured properly. But obviously, if we're going to go for ultimate, we want ultimate. But now that we've cleared ourselves a bit of room, let's talk about the star of the show here today, because this is a stealth motherboard, and these are really exciting because essentially it clears up your gaming PC massively. Especially in a case like this, it does have to support projects. I don't think it's called Project Stealth anymore. I think they're just called Stealth. It does have to support reverse connection stealth motherboards, but assuming that you can do this, once you open this up, and this is a B850 Stealth Ice from Aorus, you'll find that actually it looks a little bit plain, doesn't it, on the front? I mean, obviously it looks fantastic, and in terms of white motherboards, look, white PCB, so much on this, loads of VRM cooling, M.2 heat sinks, pretty much everything really that you would need. But crucially, when you turn this round, that's when you'll discover all of those usual connections that you'd have to plug in on the attractive side of your PC, which is fine if you're willing to spend loads of money on like really custom cables and things, but for most people, you're not going to do that. And let's be honest, seeing an HD audio cable, seeing like your huge ATX and everything kind of just cramming up your PC, it does cramp your style a little bit. Whereas by having everything on the back, it means that as long as you've got space, which most cases that have thought it out properly have ample space. Then obviously all of the messy bits are on the other side that you can't see. And actually, especially if you do go for a dual chamber design like this, then you're gonna have so much room for cable management that the compromise is pretty much zero. Before we move on, I'll quickly show you the I/O. We have a total of 10 USB-A ports on this, 1 USB-C, and then we do have Wi-Fi 7, and then 5 gig LAN. I did have to look at that, I cheated. Also, we've got optical audio, which if you're going to use a soundbar, something like a Sonos Ray, obviously that's really useful too. But let's now take this opportunity to neatly put our motherboard down on the box, obviously more carefully than usual, because you don't want to bend any of those pins. As you'd expect, our first port of call is going to be to open up our socket, again being very carefully not to damage any of the pins. Then we can pick up our completely overkill 16-core gaming and productivity CPU, but you just want to grab your chip, gently lower this down, make sure it kind of like catches on down the bottom, and then you can grab the lever, grab the socket, and just kind of clip that back into place, and obviously keep this for later on. And then with that out of the way, unfortunately we can move on to the least exciting bit of any rig. It's not really that interesting anyway, let alone when the price inflation of this is up like 2 to 3 times, and by the time this goes out it could be even more than that. This is quite an expensive kit at the best of times anyway. This is 6000 megahertz CL28, so super fast and very low latency RAM, which is very important, but you will find that with the X3D CPUs, that because there's a lot of cache actually on the CPU itself, you don't necessarily need the absolute fastest memory, though it shouldn't hurt as long as obviously your motherboard does actually take the settings when you enable the Expo profile in the BIOS. But you can see this is a lovely all-white kit, but you've got the kind of like black strip down the side, so I think it's going to perfectly match our theme as well. But let's now take the opportunity to have a look at our M.2 SSD slot, shall we? So we have one large heatsink here, supports generation 5, but we do also kind of have this faceplate that removes, and then underneath this you can see 2 more PCI generation 4, and then 1 more PCI generation 5, and this actually looks like it has a double-sided heatsink, so if you're going for a large capacity drive and it has stuff on the bottom and on the top, this is obviously probably going to be the best place for it. But let's now remove the peel on our heatsink. There we can pick up our drive, and we're not actually going for anything like ridiculous. This is probably the best, or one of the best all-round PCI generation 4 drives. They're still quite a lot more expensive than kind of like your cheaper PCI generation 4 SSDs, but this comes with things like a cache, just so general performance is really, really good. And the difference in speed, whilst theoretically different between Gen 4 and Gen 5, in kind of like real-world practice, day-to-day use, whether that's game load times or just booting up your PC, opening applications, it shouldn't really be any different between this and something that costs a whole lot more, which is exactly why I wouldn't really recommend spending the extra money unless you actively have that use case. But let's now return our lovely metal cover. There we can get our cooler. Carefully open up this box. I'm hoping that everything is pre-installed. Oh, it's not, but it does come with one of those fan frames, similar to the ones we've actually already got installed in the case, which obviously means this should be a lot quicker than just screwing, quick maths, 12 screws in, then realizing you've probably got it the wrong way round, undoing 12 screws, and then doing them up a 3rd time. Okay, so here's our AMD mounting kit, and it does indeed look like we do have some standoffs that we need to put in the AM5 slot. So let's bring this back, grab our screwdriver and take off these little plastic, they're not covers, just bits of plastic really. Plastic bits of plastic. Then we can get these little standoffs. They're slightly different, so if it doesn't want to go in, twist it around the other way, but otherwise screw these in and get them safe and secure. And then, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully most of the stressful bit is now done. As long as you haven't damaged your socket, you're good, unless you like drop the whole thing on the floor, but let's not do that. True stories, because I've just brushed. Instead, let's check out our case, our enclosure. And I know that loads of people are going to be very tempted to kind of start diving in and building everything within the case first. You can do that. The reason that we don't is just because it's easier to do it outside. We actually did a live stream earlier this week, so last week by the time you're watching this, and I forgot to do that, and it was way more difficult, and everyone in the comments was going,
"Why didn't you do it outside the case?"
It's because I forgot. Can I open this? Yes, without actually looking around. You can see we've got some nice ventilation here as well. But let's pop that to one side, and then you should be able to see. And they've actually got loads of room here for like SSDs or kind of small hard drives and things. I imagine actually for most people, unless you're migrating from an old build, you'll probably never use this. But it's always good if you want to put like extra hubs and things in there as well, because it just gives you a little bit extra room. But we can safely remove this. Oh, that looks like a door to me. Even better, it swings. Yeah, there we are, look. So you don't even need to remove it. And because this is the RGB version, you've already got one of the NZXT hubs here, which is a nice touch, which obviously makes it easier if you're going to expand it with other NZXT coolers and fans and things, which is one of the reasons we're doing it, but it doesn't mean that you have to. And it also does come in white, so if you wanted to do a completely white build, the world is your PC oyster. Let's grab our box of screws. And obviously if you do want to put hard drives, you can actually put one in here, maybe two. But okay, let's leave that side for now and then gently lower this down, open up our lens. Look, there it is. I changed to a different lens just so you could see. And then this is going to be the bit that will be controversial. The all-white stealth motherboard inside the black case. Is this going to work? Is this going to look great? I think it is, but I have been wrong with some things before. Right, okay, it does look like we potentially need to take that standoff out. Yeah, then we can try again. And this is always the downside of reverse connect, because then obviously you're quite exposed when you're connecting it, but that seems to line up nicely. So let's get that secure, and it does look like we need to take this off to access the rest of them. Once you have successfully done that though, you should then be ready to prop your motherboard back up and look. See what I mean? I think this is really going to work. The thing that we need is something to kind of connect the motherboard to the case, to kind of bring the two things together. And I think that's what the liquid cooler is going to do. Let's get that fitted next. And I do think that you could potentially make the argument that the all-round best option would be a white cooler with black fans for this particular black and white theme, but I mean that would be very expensive, so I think the safest bet is to go for this exact one, because I mean being 420 as well, it should take up all of the space. Oh, hang on. Oh yeah, I was just getting some clearance issues. That's fine, there it is. Boom, that fits nicely at the top. So let's make sure that the airflow is the right way. Pop this on top, flip it over that way. Then we can get this fitted down. And then am I going to have to remove that fan, or is it just going to magically work? No, it's absolutely fine. Cool. It would help if I had the right screws. Yes, there it is. Awesome.
Radiators.
We're okay today. But I'm hoping that we should just be able to put that in. No, we need to swap out this bracket first, actually. So we take those bits off and find the AMD one. Now be very, very careful not to disturb the thermal compound that's pre-applied to that. But we look good, so let's grab our AMD brackets, line those over the holes, just like that, look. And then this should just gently go over those standoffs. Oh, that was very easy to install actually, and then just screw on with the thumb screws. That was actually really easy. Oh, and I'll tell you what, I could be wrong here, but actually this looks like one of those coolers where the cables actually go through these tubes and are kind of plugged in and controlled around the back rather than having any like uglies coming out of here, which especially with this stealth motherboard, I think is going to make all the difference, because we are obviously going to have a cable for our graphics card, but other than that, it looks like we're going to be cable free, which is awesome. Unless I'm wrong and I look like an idiot. But we do get this very big, thick boy, so I would assume that that is the case. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It does connect to the radiator, but it connects over here. So that's gonna potentially get a bit ugly, isn't it? So this connects up here, look. It's okay, but Corsair iCUE does look better. I don't know why this isn't like a right angle connection or something, because then you could just tuck that out the way, but it's not to be, sadly. I guess we've got to try it the other way. No, because then that's the other way now. Oh, what did I say earlier? What did I say?
I hate radiators. I hate them.
No, it doesn't work because there's a fan at the bloody back. You could take the other fan off.
Oh, I hate radiators.
It's going back how it was. Right then, calming down, shall we get some of these cables plugged in? And again, because this is reverse connect, it should all take place now and at least be in one position. So we have our cooler RGB. This should connect to one of these cooler cables that I've tucked through, and then find it here. There's not actually that much slack either, which is quite annoying. Then we've got a USB 2 connection down the bottom for the cooler. And again, this cable's not actually that long in this case, but we do also have our CPU fan header that connects up here at the top. Otherwise, we've got this bundle of cable here, which includes USB-C, which is kind of in the usual position. It just feels a bit weird over here. Underneath that, we've got our USB 3, another USB 2 for our NZXT hub, right down the bottom. And then arguably the most important one is this one called front panel, and this is at the bottom left. It's this one slightly on the right of the leftmost panel. And I must admit that actually I was starting to get a little bit stressed there with the cooler for a second, but suddenly we're almost done. Just 2 bits left to go, and you can see and maintain just how clean it is this side. just that one PSU cable that is obviously going to go to the graphics card, but we don't have one yet. So shall we get this out of the box and actually see what it's all about? So again, 9070 XT, and obviously this is a 16 gigabyte of VRAM graphics card, which is incredibly important in 2025 through to 26, because it means if you are going to play games like Indiana Jones or just anything really that's kind of AAA single player using like the latest features, things like ray tracing for instance, they do require quite a lot of VRAM to actually function. And if you have a graphics card that say has 8 gigabytes, then you know, at the cheapest end it's okay in multiplayer games, but it's not exactly the best now, let alone into the future. But you can see that this is an all-white graphics card. You can move this, which is nice. I suppose if you've got cables that kind of hang in the wrong place, you might want to reposition that. And you've got a nice back plate on this as well, pass-through design. Only thing you do need to be aware of is that this is going to be not necessarily really power hungry, but it can be if you want it to be overclocked and things, because you've got 3 8-pins here. And I would assume that there's no funny business going on here, just usual screwdriver and then PCI slots 2 and 3. Doesn't have thumb screws on this, which would be a nice touch, but they are really only visual. So let's take these two out, pick up our gaming OC Ice, and then drag our 9070 XT over the top PCIe slot, and then that should just push into position like that. And with those same screws, we can get this safe and secure. And it's actually not the longest graphics card in the world, which is quite cool. So even if you're going to go for a smaller chassis, it should still fit. I mean, obviously you need to check the dimensions first, but it's not like it's one of these masters that goes all the way to the end. Oh, but right, hopefully let's give this one final spin, and then we can pick up our power supply, which is pretty new actually. I've only had this a few weeks. This is from Corsair. It is the RM850E. And the thing I really like about this is that the cables, whilst they're obviously not quite as nice as the ones you might get if you spend a load of money at Cable Mod, out of the box, they just look fantastic. It's a white power supply, white cables, and it's definitely not cheap, but relative to power supplies, I think this is one of the better value 850 watts you can get. And it also comes with a white power cable as well, for reasons. Am I right in thinking that this is literally just going to slot in like this? Yes, there it is. But let's get this screwed in. There we can get all of our power cables. Oh no, why does this happen? There's only 3 PCIe connections and we need one for the hub. This is a problem if you have a graphics card that has 3 8-pins. Looks like we're not using the white cables then. I'm gonna go for an HX1000i, but that is so disappointing. I suppose the only other option would be if I had one CPU and then used an extra connection instead of that. So if you're following this exactly to the letter, you will have to buy an extra cable, but assuming you're not using this hub, then obviously you're gonna have 3, so it'll be fine. But let's get our cables connected. So that's our large ATX, and then it connects to the PSU, one for the CPU, of which the other end will connect up here. Oh, hang on, is that a little bit of clearance issue with this case? The catch doesn't quite go in on this top, where the cutout isn't large enough. NZXT. What happened here? The ports down the bottom as well, like the cutouts, they're a bit small as well. You can get stuff through, but
It's infuriating.
I mean, I got an extension here with a slightly different catch on it. Let's see if that helps. That does look like it's in actually, just about. Not quite though. I know that you do have different brands of motherboards and things, but I mean, come on. Right, I'll break this off. I mean, I've cut a little bit off the end, so we've still got a clip for some resistance. That does at least go in now, but that will kind of pull out, which is not ideal, and it's not really particularly safe, to be honest. So as I say, disappointed with this. You might have to go for a different case, to be honest. There's just a mismatch between the motherboards and the case. As I say, the hole needs to be a little bit bigger, or I suppose you could modify the case just a little bit. If you took a little bit off here, then obviously that would be the safest way of doing it, but I suppose that might make your case a bit sharp. So yeah, just disappointed really that that's happened, but I mean, it has. So we're gonna keep our extension cable here and connect that to the extension, and then that into the PSU. Tidy as we go, look. Cable management is surprisingly good actually in this case otherwise. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally happy with that, but again, do not try this at home. And then the other thing that I needed to do was grab another Type 4 PCIe for Corsair. Use an official one would be my official recommendation, but that should otherwise connect to PCIe/CPU. And now we have 4 PCIe, so we can connect up our hub. I'm just going to tuck this cable in the hard drive cage because it's not like we need it. Oh, and then ladies and gentlemen, we should be pretty much done this side, which means we just need to come round to the main chamber, and we have 3 PCIe to connect up, which is 1 here, 2 there, and then hopefully, 3 is company, and then ladies and gentlemen, here it is, our completed rig. Did it go as smoothly as I wanted?
No.
We can't really get around the fact that we couldn't fit our CPU cable in. Not something I think I've said before in a PC Centric video, but if you were willing to expand that little slot a little bit or do something that I don't recommend, and on the record I do not recommend, then you will have something that looks like this. And as you can see, bar the kind of bad cable management that I will fix on the PCIe cables, I think this looks awesome. It's also a bit of a shame with the cooler that you do have this kind of like nubbin sticking out here. I've cable managed it the best that I can, but without bending it too much, you're always gonna have that little bit sticking out there. But I think once this is turned on, and once that cooler fundamentally has a load of RGB on it, maybe some GIFs or something and some temperatures, it's gonna look incredible. Shall we see if it works? Let's grab ourselves a monitor that I absolutely smashed my knee on earlier, so I wanna check still works. Then of course we're gonna grab ourselves a keyboard, mouse, and you know it, you love it, and it might be out of stock now, because this is going out in the future, the PC Centric Mousemat. We have been doing a clearance sale. If you wanna get one of these for, I believe, hopefully I think just under, but roughly £20, $20 or so, including shipping and stuff. So go get it with the link down below, assuming it's still available. Here comes the moment of truth. Oh, and I like the white straight out of the gate. That's exactly what I was gonna set. That is everything I wanted this to be. That looks so good. And that cooler, my word, I know it is pricey. And as we've discussed in this video, if you do wanna kind of upgrade your gaming PC or any part of your setup, that's probably not the best way to go in terms of like value for money when there's other things you can get. But if you are willing to spend the extra money, I think this is an absolutely jaw-dropping gaming PC. I absolutely love it. It's a shame that the combination of the motherboard and case hasn't exactly gone to plan, but now that we have got this working, I've got to say that this looks absolutely fantastic. And it does appear actually as well that the PC works, because the BIOS has come up and it's actually suggesting that we use X3D turbo mode to boost gaming performance. So I would assume what this does is intelligently just kind of shut down one of those CCDs to turn it into kind of like a potentially even faster 9800 X3D, but we're going to rely on the software, I think, to do this, because I want this to be kind of as stock as possible, but it's great that you do have that option. Oh, but ladies and gentlemen, that was very poorly timed. Let's get our color card all set up and ready to go, because our PC is all now set up and ready to go, and we're mid-game in some Battlefield 6. And I've got to say that this is by far the hardest game to try and walk you through the performance and actually kind of play at the same time, because obviously it's just so stop-start and you get blown up every single second like that. Do you see what I mean? This is absolute absurdity. But we do have Battlefield currently set to output at 4K. We're using FSR set to performance in order to get there, and you can see that our frame rates are around about 130 frames a second or so. So obviously if you want the absolute max performance possible, then you're probably going to want to play this at 1440p. But for those of you that are lucky enough to have a proper 4K monitor, this goes to show that you don't have to actively turn a load of settings down, because once again, we're running this at ultra settings, but we do have our textures turned all the way up to overkill, because obviously we do have the VRAM to spare. So this is very, very capable, but I am going to be interested to see what this can do at 1440p. I will also show you as well at the top right corner of your screen that this does also show you your CPU and GPU frame rate, and usually the CPU frame rate is just a little bit behind the graphics card in this particular title, which is why it's so important to obviously get yourself a really good and really powerful CPU. And as we spawn on our teammate, sadly in a different map now, so it's not true apples to apples, but I mean it still gives you a very good idea about the performance that obviously you can expect. And you're looking at around about 160 to 180 frames a second or so. So once again, it's obviously going to vary depending on what's going on in the game. But the other thing as well I'll point out is that the frame time graph has been very, very smooth throughout this. And a lot of this is again down to the fact that you've got a great pairing of a really powerful CPU with a really powerful graphics card. If one of those was kind of out of kilter, then this is when you're more likely to kind of get that horrible stutter. And assuming that you do have a nice adaptive sync monitor, and as long as it is 165 Hertz or maybe even 240, I think this system is going to be a perfect pairing for you. Oh, but hang on a second, just realised we haven't done our peel, which would almost be perfect other than the fact that once again, NZXT don't get the blooming memo, and they put the tempered glass sticker warning on the glass, not on the film. Oh, but that one did come off without really leaving any residue, so we're improving things. Oh, and PC Centric, you do love to moan, don't you? But I mean, we can't moan at the aesthetics of this system. I genuinely think this is one of the best looking systems I've done in a long, long time. I think as well because it is slightly different. It's not just an all black or all white PC. having the confidence to kind of combine everything and just have a really nice theme is fantastic. And of course, it is very easy to change things around. Here's NZXT Cam, so we can change this to Spectrum Wave, and you get a little bit of RGB, and obviously you can customize the zones and things. But this actually works a little bit better than an all-white rig, because I find that RGB just kind of gets a little bit washed out. The color just diffuses a little bit too much. But by having the black case and then the white components, especially some of the silvery effects that you get as well on the motherboard, I actually think this works better than an all-white build, assuming obviously that's the way you want to go. Let's go for NZXT Purple. That really works there as well. I honestly love this, and I'm getting ideas for my next personal rig. And also, let's not brush over just how good that CPU cooler looks. It's absolutely insane. It's almost unreal. I think NZXT were one of the main players. I mean, I was there when they first released their NZXT Kraken range all those years ago. And that was kind of class leading and really different and out there at the time, but they've really taken things to the next level now. Unlike some of their cheaper coolers as well, this does get nice and dark, so you've not got that kind of IPS glow backlight that actually annoys me on some of their cheaper coolers. Here, this looks really premium, and as you saw from those temperatures earlier, it's doing a really good job of keeping our 9950X3D under check. This is by no means sponsored, but I honestly think this is probably now my favorite cooler on the market if you want to go for an LCD. But right, ladies and gentlemen, I think the time has come to move on to something a little bit calmer, because Battlefield is too over the top. Too many explosions for my liking. Let's talk about something a little bit calmer, something that I really do need to get back into. This is some Civilization 7. This is running at 4K. We do have FSR, but now it's set to quality, not performance. And we're running this with the Vulkan mode, and you can see we're getting around about 170 to 180 frames a second or so. So this is another one of those games that actually, I don't want to say it like requires a really heavy CPU, but in order to obviously have the game running its absolute best, it's also very demanding on the CPU, not only for turn time, but actually for the game itself as well. So if you're running this on a really light system, you might find that you don't get the same experience that you would have done on the older Civilization games. But regardless, there's no doubt about it that if you want to play Civilization, then yes, you can get a really nice sky-high frame rate, and it's a really good-looking game as well. I really like the art style. I think this is one of the big pluses that they did with Civ 7 versus Civ 6. Not still 100% convinced that all of the changes were for the better, but I've got to say, whenever I do sit down and play it, I'm really enjoying it. But this is a big map as well, so you'll notice that when you start the game, obviously your frame rate should be a fair bit higher, but once you get more people and there's more turns and things, then yes, it is going to get more demanding. So bear this in mind. Oh, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Perhaps we have saved the best for last. The Last of Us Part 2. And jokes aside, the reason I say this is because this is one of the games that does actually support FSR 4, and I think this is probably the best technology that AMD have come out with in a long, long time, because this is a complete game changer when it comes to image quality. Because, I mean, what you're seeing here is not native 4K, but it certainly looks like it. This is actually FSR 4 performance outputting at 4K, but even in motion, and I'm going to zoom this in so you can properly appreciate this, the image is so stable. It is as close to native really as you could just hope for really on AMD. This is really impressive stuff. If you compared it against native, you may well be able to nitpick like certain bits here and there, but I'm genuinely speechless, because when this technology first launched, it was such a huge step up versus FSR 1, 2, and 3. It blows my mind every single time I use it. I mean, obviously we would like to see even more games support this, and it's been getting a lot better since launch. More and more titles obviously are coming out with this, but you can see at these settings you're getting around about 120 to 130 frames a second or so. So there's no doubt about it that this is going to give you an awesome experience, and obviously this is a game on console. A lot of people were playing at 30 frames a second, so to be able to get like 100 to 150 FPS, obviously it is going to vary depending on where you are in the title, but yeah, I think it is very impressive. Last thing we need to do before we wrap this up though is just talk about some thermals. You can see our CPU is sitting very coolly at 61 degrees, as you would expect from a system with a 420 rad, but in terms of noise, basically nothing. It's kind of like console quiet really, which is very impressive. Bearing in mind we're drawing 328 watts of power on the graphics card and then around about 100 watts on the CPU. Obviously, if you're in an application that's going to use all 16 cores all at once, then the power usage on the CPU is going to go up. But all things considered, I think this is an awesome system, and I am really proud of what we put together here. Sometimes I've got great ideas, the execution's not quite there, but I don't think there's really anything I would change about this. I absolutely love it. I know obviously we've gone a little bit overboard on that CPU, so most people probably 9800X3D. The cooler is awesome, and it kind of makes this rig But if you wanted to save money and get a 360, obviously that's going to be fine too. But everything else, I think, is top drawer. Would love to hear your thoughts though. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. But smash the like button, get yourself subscribed. And if you do want to check out current pricing on anything that was featured in this video, you can find it listed down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.